My name is Paul Thomas. I started doing judo here in Houston, Texas under Carl Geis in the 80s. Down the road as the UFC came around, but before the UFC I found myself in Brazil, and I was doing a student exchange program, and there I hooked up with Draculino, who is under Carlinhos Gracie, and I started doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. All right, guys, let's talk about the history of Judo and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. It started in India a long time ago. There's grapplers that came out of India that traveled to Japan and taught the Japanese how to grapple. Then during feudal Japan, the samurai started developing a grappling art called Ju-jitsu, right? The reason it's a grappling art and not a striking art is because the samurai wore armor, and it wouldn't behoove them to like kick and punch. What they had to do is they had to grapple. They had to take the guy down and attack their joints, so namely their arms and their legs, right? Because you can't put armor over your knee or your elbow, right? And that's how Jiu-Jitsu became a grappling art. And he took this new sport of judo and he put it in all the school systems, right? From that, you have one particular person named Miyoto Maeda, who was a very good judoka. That's a student of judo. Initially, he was part of an entourage to teach Roosevelt how to do judo and jiu-jitsu, right? And from there, Miyoto Maeda became a professional wrestler, right? What he did, he traveled out through the United States, he lived a long time in Mexico. He stayed in Cuba for a while and eventually landed in Brazil. And there he would take on all comers, right? People don't know it, but he traveled a lot with catch wrestlers too. Catch wrestling is a form of wrestling that comes out of the United States. And he combined a lot of those techniques, added them to his traditional judo. And so it could be, and we don't know why, but when he got to Brazil, he quit teaching judo and he started calling it jiu-jitsu. Good, good, I like it. Right-handed grips. Don't switch up yet, don't switch up, no switching up. We're still fighting right-handed, all of us. What I'm trying to do is like create a martial arts school whereby my people know how to like throw, fall, and fight on the ground. Typically you see like a martial arts instructor have his background in one or the other. He has a background in judo, so he knows how to throw, or he has a background in jiu-jitsu, so he knows groundwork. But you see very few people have both of them, and that's what I want. I want my guys to be able to throw somebody, take a fall, but also be able to finish with a submission. You need to be balanced. Yes, you need to be able to take a guy down, and you need to be able to make him tap on the ground and finish him on the ground. Sometimes the throw is all you need. Sometimes you could incapacitate a guy just with a good throw, but then sometimes that's not enough. Again, I have a lot of law enforcement in here, people who do security, and they find that the throw by itself isn't enough. They have to be able to immobilize a guy or make him submit by doing the groundwork. So both of them are very important. Judo has groundwork also, I should mention. They have like chokes and arm bars. In fact, they even have leg locks, but they made leg locks against the rules sometimes in the 30s. There's a lot of like groundwork in judo, but it's different. For instance, in judo, they do hold downs. They don't do hold downs in jiu-jitsu. You get points for certain hold downs, but what's important is getting the submission. And I think a byproduct is, my feeling is that a lot of the judo players have better hold downs. They're harder to hold down, and once they like stick you, it's impossible to move. So the groundwork is different. In judo, you're gonna like try to get off of a throw, maybe fall on your stomach, and we call that the prone position. That means you're face down, okay? And you have to be able to defend yourself from that position. In jiu-jitsu, what's gonna happen is a guy's gonna sit down and you're gonna end up in the guard position. And you have to be able to pass his legs and immobilize him. You have your hold downs again without being tapped out. America, the United States, has the second best jiu-jitsu in the world, Brazil being the first, and then the United States following them. Japan, Brazilian jiu-jitsu has become a big deal also.
So judo is a big part of that.
Yes, sir. Well, I mean, Brazilian jiu-jitsu has its roots in judo. Miyoto Maeda was a judoka who traveled to Brazil, hooked up with the Gracies, and taught the Gracie family how. Obviously, it has a Japanese origin. I mean, they wear kimonos when they grapple, but it was Miyoto Maeda, a Japanese judoka, who taught the Gracies Jiu-Jitsu, but he modified it, you know, as he traveled throughout the Americas, like doing his, I guess you could call it MMA or Vale Tudo, challenging all comers. He modified the old judo ways. I mean, the stuff that works in Olympic judo isn't the same thing that works in what the Brazilians call Vale Tudo, which is no rules fighting. You have to be able to fight from the ground, and you have to be able to use a guard. Fundamentally, the techniques are the same. The throws are the same. You see the same throws in Jiu-Jitsu that you see in Judo, and you see the same type of arm bars and chokes that you see in Jiu-Jitsu and Judo. But the way you train is different. If you're going to train in Jiu-Jitsu, you train in groundwork for excellence in submission. If you're going to train in Judo, you'd have to like do mostly what the Japanese call tashiwaza, or standing work. You'd have to be able to like do those throws. And Judo never caught on in the United States. I don't know why. You know, as long as I've been doing Judo, there's always been a lot of politics and a lot of people saying that we need to do more PR in Judo, but it never caught on. Because the emphasis in Jiu-Jitsu is what they call the guard position. That's where like I'm fighting somebody who's trying to like pin me. Okay, so he's coming at me from between my legs. And that's where all your strong submissions are at. In Judo, you don't need that position as much. In fact, you don't need any newaza at all, that's groundwork, to do Judo. You could just defend well on the ground and be able to throw.
But don't Jiu-Jitsu guys learn how to throw? I mean, I thought it was part of the curriculum, the Judo curriculum.
You know, that's a good question. You don't need to be able to throw to do Jiu-Jitsu. I know a lot of high-level black belts who don't know anything about throwing. That is something that you would have to like study Judo for. There's a lot of like high-level Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu black belts who just pull guard. That is, they just like come in and sit down on their butt. And in that rule set, you could do that.
So how is that beneficial?
Well, man, when you're doing something like mixed martial arts where you have to have groundwork, you're going to end up on the ground. It used to be a mixed martial, and you don't need Jiu-Jitsu and mixed martial arts like you used to. Back when Royce Gracie did the mixed martial arts, okay, as NHB back then, no holds barred, they knew that they had no time limit. There's no rounds. So they knew they were going to get to the ground. So it was all just groundwork. If you wanted to be good in the UFC for the first like 10 UFC, first 5 really, you had to have groundwork, and you knew you were going to end up in the guard. So you really didn't need throws. You watch like Royce Gracie, he would just kind of bum rush a guy, and then they'd both end up on the ground.
So getting the two together is a plus.
Oh yes, you know. The Judo players, they have a lot to benefit by doing Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, by learning their style of newaza. And you could see the Koreans and the Japanese, they have adapted a lot of the techniques from Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu to Olympic Judo. So, and conversely, if you do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, if you throw the guy, you get 2 points, and the guy who gets the first points, typically, statistically, he wins.